Today we're going to talk about one of the most absolutely wild feats in aviation history. Seriously, it's this incredible story of pure endurance, a ton of danger, and a publicity stunt so crazy that it set a world record that, get this, can never, ever be broken.
So just imagine this for a second. A plane takes off and just stays in the air for over 2 months, 64 days without landing. It sounds completely nuts, right? Almost impossible. But it actually happened. And the big question we're all thinking is, how in the world did they pull that off?
Well, our story doesn't start in some fancy, high-tech aviation lab. Nope. It starts in 1956, Las Vegas. And we're not talking about the big, flashy casinos on the Strip. We're talking about the much more modest Hacienda Hotel. See, the owner, a guy named Warren Bailey, had a problem. He needed a gimmick, something big, something that would make his little hotel stand out and get everybody talking.
And that's when a World War II pilot, a guy by the name of Bob Tim, walks in with this wild idea. He tells Bailey, hey, the current flight endurance record is 46 days. What if we don't just beat it? What if we completely shatter it? And the best part? They do it in a plane with Hacienda painted all over it. So the goal was super simple. Get those headlines. But the challenge? Oh, the challenge was absolutely monumental. Okay, so to even think about attempting something like this, you can't just, grab any old plane off the lot. No way. They had to take a regular off-the-shelf Cessna 172 and basically turn it into a flying hotel room. Or maybe more like a flying survival pod. It had to be a bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom, all crammed into a space that's smaller than the inside of your car. And the way they did it was just brilliant. I mean, the ingenuity here is off the charts. They literally ripped out the co-pilot seat and put in a foam mattress so one guy could sleep while the other flew. They rigged up this tiny little sink for sponge baths. The whole backbench? Gone, replaced with storage. And, most importantly, they strapped a massive 95-gallon fuel tank to the belly of the plane and set up an electric winch to pull up a refueling hose.
But the single most dangerous part of this whole plan? It had to be the refueling. And you're not going to believe this. It literally required the co-pilot to open a custom door, fold out this tiny little metal platform, and then step outside the airplane. While it was flying, I'm not kidding. It was the only spot where they could stand up straight, totally exposed, hundreds of feet in the air, trying to wrangle a fuel hose.
So with a plan that crazy, you'd think the hardest part would be the flight itself, right? Well, not exactly. The road to even getting off the ground was rocky, to say the least. The project was hit with so many failures and arguments that it almost fell apart before it even started.
Just look at this series of setbacks. Their first test flights in the summer of '58, total failure. The engine kept overheating. The second and third tries, same thing. It got so tense that Tim actually fired his first co-pilot. And then, as if things weren't bad enough, while they're stuck on the ground trying to figure things out, some rival pilots go up and set a brand new record, 50 days. So their goal just got even harder.
But despite all that, Tim didn't give up. He found a new co-pilot, a really skilled mechanic named John Cook, which was a smart move. And so on December 4th, 1958, they finally took off from Las Vegas. They were absolutely determined to make history, and their incredible 64-day ordeal was officially underway.
Now, to make sure there was no cheating, the officials came up with this really clever system. Right after takeoff, the plane swooped down low over the runway. A chase car sped up right alongside it and, get this, painted a perfect white stripe on the plane's tires. The idea was simple. If they tried to land secretly, anywhere at all, that white stripe would get scuffed up and the whole record attempt would be disqualified. Pretty smart, right?
And this whole setup led to what you can only call a daily death with death. Twice a day, every single day, they had to fly their little Cessna just 20 feet, that's it, 20 feet above a truck that was speeding down a straight desert road. For 3 whole minutes, the pilot and the truck driver had to be perfectly in sync, matching speeds exactly while the crew on the ground sent up fuel and food. I mean, think about that. One tiny mistake from either of them and it would have been an absolute disaster.
So, what do you even do for 2 months stuck inside a tiny plane? Well, life settled into this really bizarre routine. They'd read comic books, do exercises to keep from getting too stiff, and they actually ate pretty well. The chef from the Hacienda would cook up meals that got winched up to them every day. And for the less glamorous side of things, they had a camp toilet that they emptied it out over the empty desert. So their whole life was just this weird mix of total boredom broken up by moments of pure terror.
And the exhaustion, my God, the exhaustion was just brutal. About 36 days into the flight, one night, Bob Tim just passed out. He fell asleep right there at the controls.
For a solid hour, the plane was just flying itself on autopilot. And when he woke up, it was to an absolute nightmare. He was flying inside a canyon, super low, with the rocky canyon walls just feet away from his wingtips. A few more minutes and this whole story would have ended right there. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, on day 39, it did. The generator failed. And that was a catastrophe. I mean, a total game changer. Suddenly, no more cabin heater in the freezing desert night, no more lights, and worst of all, no more electric fuel pump. From that point on, they had to pump all that fuel by hand. Refueling at night became this terrifying guessing game in pitch blackness, as other systems started failing one by one.
But here's the amazing part. Even with the crushing exhaustion and with their plane literally falling apart around them, they just kept going. They would not give up. And as they flew past that 50-day mark, the world finally started to sit up and take notice.
And then it happened. On January 23, 1959, they did it. They officially flew past the 50-day mark and broke the world record. The crazy publicity stunt had actually worked. Their story was in newspapers all over the country. The little Hacienda Hotel, it was finally famous.
So they broke the record. Time to land, right? Nope. They didn't land. I guess they figured they had been through so much, why stop now? They made a new decision. They were going to stay up there until the plane itself physically couldn't fly anymore. So they kept going for another 2 weeks, pushing that record from just impressive into absolutely legendary territory.
But eventually, you can only push a machine so far. All that wear and tear finally caught up with them. The little Cessna was just done. It was battered, parts were broken, and it was barely staying in the air. It was finally time to come home.
So on February 7th, 1959, they radioed in for permission to land at McCarran Field in Vegas. And when they finally touched down, the clock stopped at an unbelievable 64 days, 22 hours, and 19 minutes. That was it, the final, mind-boggling record.
And when they landed, it was a hero's welcome. There was this huge crowd waiting for them, reporters, family, everybody. But the whole ordeal had taken a huge toll. Both Tim and Cook were so weak after 2 months of being cramped in that tiny space that they literally had to be carried out of the cockpit. And of course, the officials rushed right over to the wheels and confirmed it. That white paint stripe was still perfect.
And this is the part that makes the story so incredible. This is why it matters. For years, other pilots thought about trying to break this record. But honestly, it was just too dangerous. Eventually, the official aviation authorities just discontinued the entire record category. They said, nope, we're not encouraging anyone to try this again. And that decision instantly cemented the 64-day flight in history. It's a record that literally can't be broken because no one is allowed to try.
So the pilots became absolute legends. The Hacienda got all the fame it wanted. But what about the plane? What happened to the little Cessna that was the real star of the show?
Well, in what has to be the most perfect ending to this story, the record-breaking Cessna, the Hacienda, was fully restored. And today, it hangs from the ceiling right above the baggage claim at the Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas. I'm serious. So the next time you find yourself in Vegas waiting for your luggage, just look up. You might be standing directly underneath a piece of history that will never, ever be repeated.